Hi, and welcome back to Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Euler. I'm your host, Brad Wilder. Today, John and Dan Kleinman return for part 2. Lots to discuss as we head down the path of the World Library Association. It's a brand new organization that was started a couple of weeks ago, and there has been some great feedback from a lot of people around the world, and a lot of people starting to join this organization to help get it up and underway to kick off a new level of protection, not only within libraries here in North America, but also around the world. Dan, great to have you on the show again.
Brett, thank you. And Dan Kleinman, thank you for being back with us. We are featuring the launch of the World Library Association. One of the things you mentioned in part 1, I recommend people go back and view that, is that the American Library Association has, in effect, run cover for sexual predators. They've facilitated inappropriate material, the most recent being supporting materials, books, providing books about the trans deception, the trans movement that can be used and are used to groom kids, highly sexually inappropriate. But you brought another situation up that parents need to understand, and it really got me energized because it connects with my clinical background, not just as someone who has worked with survivors, but also someone who has, for 15 years, have worked with sex offenders, sexual predators. And sexual predators use libraries, and the ALA, the American Library Association, has essentially run cover for that. And a perpetrator, and this being summertime, as we're recording this right now, it is a guarantee that in the major cities, and who uses libraries in the major cities? Typically, moms are hoping that their kids, they drop the kids off at libraries, what more of a safe location than a library? Kids will get educated, kids are safe. But little do parents know that actively within libraries now are sexual predators that go into the computer section. They will position themselves literally and figuratively to be able to groom kids by bringing up pornographic material on the computers. They will either allow kids to see that, or they work in concert with other perps, or they may be solo, but they'll leave that material up on the computer. As you indicated, Dan, that based upon the ALA, American Library Association, which you have had concerns about for years, the computer sites, the history is scrubbed, and therefore perps know that they can go in there, they can access child pornography, they can access material that they can show other kids walking right behind them, and they can also set things up for another perp that walks in. And with the film Sound of Freedom that's just come out, people need to understand how sophisticated child predator networks are, that if I'm a perp, I can go in, I can look around, I can profile kids pretty quickly. I can see which kids come from single-parent homes or disadvantaged. I can start to, day after day, form a relationship with a kid. I'm beginning to target these kids, and lo and behold, that you can have a very dangerous situation along with putting sexual content, pornographic content in front of kids. And so, Dan, you have somebody on your board or now connected with the World Library Association. We have that book. He was a part of, I'm going to share the screen right now on my end, because that'll be the perfect segue into helping parents understand that we need to now get behind your organization. On our homepage, if people scroll down, watch your eyes, we're going to scroll down for a moment. There's a case that right there. Dan, that was a case with Megan Fox and Kevin Dujan, if I'm pronouncing that properly. Talk to us about, Kevin, talk to us about this situation that brought this book about, because this is exactly what parents need to understand. Going on in libraries, it's a potentially dangerous situation, and the World Library Association is now going to provide an alternative to where libraries can once again be a place of learning and a place of safety for kids.
Yeah. Kevin Dujon is on the board of World Library Association and is a member. And he is the author of this book. And on the cover, you can see it says, "I hope somebody writes about this someday." And that was the former head of the Office for Intellectual Freedom at the American Library Association. Well, somebody did write about this someday. And what happened was this library had child pornography crime that it was covering up by any means possible. And the American Library Association was directly assisting in that cover-up. And for example, the lawyer for the library wrote that the fact that the man is viewing pornography on the library's computer, well, we don't actually really know that, child pornography. We don't actually really know that, he says, because as he was trained by the American Library Association, only a judge can determine what is child pornography, not a librarian looking at the screen. So you can't make a judgment that that man is looking at child pornography because you're not a judge. Even if it is child pornography, it's not your place to make that decision. So there's that. And he made the excuse that you needed to protect his privacy. And you had to protect his privacy even if he's viewing child pornography, because you can't really tell if it's child pornography. So this was going on in that library. This, by the way, is what the American Library Association is getting millions of donations for. They're going to train additional lawyers. They specifically said this. They're going to ramp up their Lawyers for Libraries program to train them on these very same things that just happened in that library that led that cover-up for 2.5 years. It is a danger that communities will be misled into thinking that child pornography cannot be kicked out of a library because only a judge can determine what is child pornography. That basically means it will never happen. You'll never be able to get any child pornography out of a library because every single website that was ever child pornography first has to go to a judge. This is the American Library Association's thinking.
Okay, and this is the same organization that is hosting Drag Queen Story Hour. So if you were to put together the perfect cover for child predators, it would be you have up front, on the front end, the grooming taking place, the sexualization of kids, and then you provide cover, literal cover for child sexual predators bringing up child porn on public library computers that erase the history. And Dan, as you said, you're familiar with certain police officers from LA County that don't even try to enforce anything now in libraries because it's futile and they get pushback from the libraries, and the history of these guys, they're erased. And so it becomes the ultimate safe haven. And I've had guys in my sex offender treatment groups that were busted in libraries, that were masturbating in front of kids, and cops were able to find them. So libraries have become a very dangerous place as far as exploitation of minors.
Yeah. And based on that, I'm going to ask you if you'll join our team at World Library Association.
I would be happy to. Okay. Right, so we can help protect women and children. That's what that's what Unmasking the Trans Movement is all about. That's what the World Library Association is all about. We're not anti-anything. We are all for the protection of women and children, and people need to understand that predators do not take any time off, and they're always looking for the next creative alternative to access children, and libraries have become a safe haven for predators. And the World Library Association has said enough, that now communities will have an alternative. And I want to encourage people on the local level, churches and local community and civic leaders, to get behind you, Dan, because now we can bring back, through the World Library Association, common sense, decency, good old-fashioned normal standards where libraries can become places of literal safety and a place of learning. So talk to us again about the mission of the World Library Association, and let's continue on reviewing your website where people can go on. They can begin to donate. You're soon to become a 501c3, but as you indicated, there have been very large donors such as Robert Kraft, who owns the Patriots. I want to challenge every owner of every NFL or major league organization. If you want to now help public libraries, the way to do it as far as local communities is by donating, getting behind the World Library Association. Now you have a family-friendly, a child-safe organization that's going to bring sanity back to libraries instead of this grooming stuff.
Right. We're everybody friendly, not just family friendly, right?
Right.
We're not going to have anything special. We're just going to have common sense, community standards, and a return to law that the communities have in their own communities already. Even some of the laws are already in place that they can use, but don't realize right now because nobody lets them know. So we're going to help these communities have an alternative to the American Library Association for information on what kind of what their policies can be, what kind of a training they can get. You go to trainings nowadays in library associations, like the New York Library Association is going to have a training on how being a trans ally is not enough. Because allies they're just there to help you and say good going and give you a pat on the back. The actual class that they're giving in the New York Library Association's annual meeting is going to be on how you have to be more than an ally. You actually have to be an accomplice. That's the word they used. An accomplice on pushing this stuff. Notice nothing I said had anything to do with librarianship. They just want to train librarians to start being an accomplice in pushing this political goal. That has nothing to do with libraries. The point is people are tired of this kind of stuff. They're tired of having to send their people for training at organizations that are giving them this kind of training. They want an alternative. I've created that alternative because enough people finally said to me, there's nowhere else to go. Well, now there is. We're new, we're starting, but we're building, and you'll be able to get training that will have to do with libraries and common sense, community standards, and the law. That's the way to restore power back to your local community and not to some organization located in Chicago, Illinois.
And schools. Dan, talk about how right now the American Library Association has influence into schools that are then overseeing and putting all this deviant material into schools that are helping to groom and sexualize kids.
The influence of the American Library Association is so great that school boards don't even realize they have the power under the Supreme Court of the United States to remove pervasively vulgar and educationally unsuitable materials from school libraries immediately without any reconsideration, reviews, or anything. Just remove them. It's perfectly legal. You don't have to go to a judge like you do with an obscenity case. You can remove this stuff right now. School boards don't realize that because of the American Library Association's full court press to fool them. I was attended a Roxbury library, a Roxbury school meeting, for example, in New Jersey, and this is a case where the librarian is suing the parents to silence them, and I'm involved in that case. I was mentioned in the case. I'm not a party. And who shows up at the door at the meeting but another New Jersey librarian from out of Roxbury, and she's handing out stickers that say "Free people read freely," which sounds great, but it's an American Library Association trademark, and they don't even say it there. So and she's handing these things out to people, and she's saying it, and they're all saying it, and the school board gets all bamboozled, like, well, we can't keep kids from reading genderqueer because free people can read freely. Well, that just completely ignores the Supreme Court of the United States. It ignores common sense, it ignores community standards, and it ignores local law. This is the problem with the American Library Association and the kind of weight and pressure they put on school boards so that they don't even realize they have the power to clean up their own schools. The World Library Association is going to provide the opportunity to get out of that rat race and get into a library that actually complies with the law and your own community interest and your own common sense. Totally different kind of an animal going on, and it's going to be for everybody because everybody supports this. It's not just a conservative or anything like that. It's an everybody. That is one thing that the American Library Association likes to point out, that it's just the conservative mom prudes that are into this. That's false. They know it, but it's a good selling point for them because then people will not like it because it's conservative. The reality is everybody opposes this stuff, and it's the librarians pushing this who are in the minority, not the moms and the communities who don't want their children to be sexualized in schools. We're in the majority. It's the people in Chicago, Illinois who are in the minority. Don't let them fool you by claiming it's the other way around.
So Dan, just so people understand how a library is run and where the American Library Association, how it's really taken hold is, and let me see if my understanding is correct. So if I am a community leader, if I'm a commissioner or a county board supervisor, we have libraries. Well, who's going to run a library? The same thing in school. Well, we hire a librarian. And so the librarian then is part of an organization. We are going to assume it's a training organization. They've got their, ideally, a master's degree in, I forget, library science, I think it is. And so they're a part of an umbrella organization called the American Library Association. So I, as the person who, let's say, hired this librarian, so we have a library, we hire a librarian, and we trust that this librarian not only knows the Dewey Decimal System, how to put books on stacks, but nowadays they're going to be the ones to kind of keep tabs on not just the books, but what books come in. And so is it fair to say that the librarians are trained? So we're hiring a librarian. They're trained now by the American Library Association, not just in best practices, but now, as you're saying, they're becoming activists in deviant materials and putting material in.
My concern at the World Library Association is pervasively vulgar and educationally unsuitable. Any other words like deviant, evil?
Okay, that's mine because I deal with sex offenders. That's right. But is that fair to say that that's how the American Library Association was taken over and has influence? And so now the World Library Association, now a community, now those that are in a position to make the decisions to hire the librarians have an alternative instead of the American Library Association.
Yeah. Let me give you a specific. So you just talked about a librarian who gets hired to run your library, and she goes to the ALA and she looks at for example, their Library Bill of Rights. Well, the Library Bill of Rights has a nice name that makes it sound very important, but that's the document that included the word age over 50 years ago from a radical 60s sociologist. That word age is why kids are getting sexually inappropriate material at all ages now, because it makes it illegal or a violation of the Library Bill of Rights to keep children from the inappropriate material. That's how it gets into the schools. You're absolutely right. Then the American Library Association takes that little word age in the Library Bill of Rights and gets it into law. In Illinois, it was just passed the Right to Read Act, in which it specifically incorporates the Library Bill of Rights itself, including its words, into law. So these are laws that nobody ever voted on, including the legislators. They just included the Library Bill of Rights that has that radical 60s idea age in it that's sexualizing all the children, and suddenly it's law in Illinois. And the ALA wants that to be laws in states nationwide.
This is a pedophile's dream come true. Right?
Worse.
When they toy with the age term, right, consent and age, this is an end run on age of consent laws.
Yes. It gets worse because the Biden administration is now getting the U.S. Department of Education to push the American Library Association's age views nationwide. That's what makes it bad. The government is about to force this on children nationwide. It's going to be a giant mess when that happens. This is why the World Library Association needs some major funding, so we can counteract this and expose this and protect these kids from being harmed in this fashion.
So yeah.
And let me be more specific. One of the parts of this law is that they're going to make it illegal for parents to challenge books based on the fact that they are inclusive or diverse, which just on the surface of it sounds pretty good. Okay, so you don't want to challenge books that are diverse and inclusive. But what they don't teach you is how diversity and inclusion is defined by the librarians. I can teach you that. Why? By showing you a video of her actually saying this kind of stuff, where the leader of the Office for Intellectual Freedom is training librarians. And she's training them and she says, we know this work is inappropriate for minors, sexually inappropriate for minors. She says this, but we're going to reframe it as diversity and inclusion. So now we know that's sexually inappropriate work for minors that could be excluded under the Board of Education versus PICO case has been reframed by librarians as diversity and inclusion, and along comes the U.S. Department of Education, makes diversity and inclusion the reason why you can't challenge books in schools. That means you can't challenge sexually inappropriate books in schools because of the way they define it. And if you want me to show you that video, I can show it to you.
If you have it available. Seconds. Okay. Well, maybe you can queue it up. We're going to still go through your site. So what I want to do, Brad, we're going to challenge any. We're going to look for corporate sponsors. We want. There are very good organizations out there, very good companies out there that really want the best for their communities and their customers and for parents and families. I want to challenge organizations, companies to now get behind the World Library Association. It is time to bring normal community standards back. It is time to help libraries be places of safety and learning, not this radicalization and grooming. And Dan has been fighting this fight for decades. He has now said enough is enough, and he is launching the World Library Association. It is time to say enough is enough to grooming of kids. This is not what libraries were for. We're going to take back libraries to where parents know that when they drop kids off at a library, kids are not going to be faced with inappropriate material that can groom them, that can exploit them, and libraries are no longer going to be a safe haven for child predators as they are now, because they're given safe haven by the American Library Association.
Right. Another thing we're going to do, by the way, is we're going to rebalance the library collections. Lately, the collections have been balanced towards the political views of this one organization. And other authors, like dead white guys, that's their words, not mine, are disappearing from the collections. That's another problem in libraries. You can go into a kids section, and about 90% of the books will be in the gender area, and the rest of them are just disappearing. Otherwise, they're actually removing Dr. Seuss books, for example. 4 of them have been removed, or 6.
What, they're removing Dr. Seuss?
Yeah, but Dr. Seuss removed them himself after pressure. The people who own Dr. Seuss removed these books after pressure from librarians because supposedly they contain, inappropriate material in them or whatever.
Okay, see, that's what's happening. That we're okay. So that in and of itself, right? That in and of itself ought to get parents involved. So books, time-tested books like The Cat in the Hat and The Places You'll Go, right, are being removed and being replaced with.
Not The Cat in the Hat.
Okay, The Cat in the Hat. Well, it's soon, right? It's soon to be gone. But this is serious because not only are time-tested literature being removed, but it's being replaced with. So as you say, 90% of the books now, a parent drops a kid off, think it's summertime right now.
Not all libraries, mind you, just some of them can be like
right,
this.
But it's only a matter of time. And so, libraries used to be a place where a parent, it's summertime, parents may have to work or they have to do errands, so we're going to drop the kids off at the library, assuming kids are going to have access to educational material. Now, what they have access to is both sexually inappropriate. As you said, 90% of the books now are about this woke gender ideology. So the kid's going to wander the stacks, pick up a couple of books. Now they're going to see pictures that if they were drawings in these books, like genderqueer, if these were actual photographs, then those that produced it and distributed or disseminated it would be arrested for child pornography. But the way they get away with it is with drawings. So not only the material, but very likely because the ALA has been running cover for and training the librarians not to mess with child predators, your child may likely encounter, especially if it's in a large city, your child is going to be encountering a child predator that's being given safe haven.
And it's not just the ALA, right? This is a giant movement against children. It includes, publishers, major publishers that have book fairs in the schools and everything. These people are suggesting books for librarians that contain all these kinds of books. There are other organizations that are sending these books for free into libraries, right? Those books get accepted, but Brad's book, for example, are not going to get accepted because they're not politically correct. But there are all organizations that are just sending boxes of these kinds of books into libraries, and they're all getting accepted and putting into the children's section. So it's more than just the Library Association itself. It's a giant organization that is all fixated on children and how to indoctrinate them with whatever the political agenda is that they're trying to push today.
Okay, so
That's what libraries are about. We're not publicly funded organizations so somebody can push their agenda on them. Right? Would anybody like to hear that, a gun rights person is going to push their gun rights agenda on a library? Nobody would allow that. So why are the librarians with their little agendas pushing it on the libraries and getting away with that? Meantime, as you may have heard, Haley Kennington, for example, has reported on the American Library Association training libraries how to block Kirk Cameron and Brave books from public libraries because of the Christian content of it and so on and so forth. The American Library Association has just taken a stance against Muslims. They don't want to have the IFLA, the International whatever that is, meeting in Dubai. So there are library associations that belong to the ALA stating we're not going to go to Dubai, we're going to drop out. The head of another library association, name escapes me, he says, we're going to drop our affiliation in IFLA because you're supporting these Muslims. These people get away with all sorts of agendas using the public money to do it. It's about time that there be a little bit of a balance. This is why the World Library Association is coming into play, and it needs resources in order to grow and counteract the American Library Association's millions. That's why it's there.
And you have a video prepared? We're coming close on time here, but then I also want you to bring up your website so people can go to your website and begin the process of getting educated and supporting the World Library Association now.
Okay, let me show you I'm going to show you another website where I have this thing linked. This is my normal safe libraries, but right here, the videos. This is going to be an eye-opener. You can watch ALA reframe adult material as diversity and inclusion.
But ultimately, we found that the thing that needs to happen most, and it needs to happen before these bills are introduced, is sustained messaging that reframes this issue, that takes it away from the idea that these are inappropriate for minors or sexually inappropriate for minors, and promote them as diverse materials and programming that are about inclusion, fairness, and the protection of everybody's right to see themselves and their families reflected in the books in the public library. But ultimately,
Unbelievable. That's exactly how perps are afforded cover. I can't believe what I just heard, Dan. That we're going to reframe child porn, the use of child porn. Unbelievable. I want her electronics checked by law enforcement.
She's got a lot of problems I won't go into here, but she's, what's that with the Peter principle where the garbage rises to the top or whatever? But be that as it may.
I mean, with the movie Sound of Freedom, everybody is suspect now. You start reframing child porn, and I have real questions about your associations.
Thank you. Okay. So what did you want to see about this website now?
Well, again, let people know where they can contact you, because again, we're going to assume that people are going to get behind you. They're going to contact their local officials, say, listen, we now want World Library Association instead of ALA. Okay,
I'm Dan Kleinman, and I'm from World Library Association, which is at worldlibraryassociation.org. Here's our contact page. Here's our email, a phone number in the United States, an address. You can follow us different ways, and you can actually write to us right now. I'd get a message right now if you wanted to fill this out.
Would this be the same for colleges and universities, Dan?
Everybody. We're going to be for everybody, just like ALA is for everybody.
Okay, so Christian colleges should be reaching out to you right now.
Everybody should be. I mean, look, we're new. We've been here for 2 weeks, all right? So we're growing. So we don't have the full weight of everything going on yet. You know, we don't have all our classes. We don't appear at conferences nationally or anything just yet, because we're just.
But you will. You will.
We will. So you want to at least become aware of us and get on board. And the membership fee is, let's see, if we go to membership. This is going to be the shortest page on the site. Membership is free. World Library Association putting the free into intellectual freedom. It's part of your library, your way. Just give us an email address and a name so we can send you messages from time to time, and that's it. You could use all of our resources for free here. You know, I don't get why the Office for Intellectual Freedom charges $50 to watch one of their webinars on intellectual freedom. What's the free in freedom if you're charging people $50 to learn about intellectual freedom at the Office for Intellectual Freedom? I don't get that. They get millions from organizations like Mellon, 22 million, $1 million from Jay-Z and Robert Kraft, $1 million from Solidarity Giving, millions from Open Society. I have no idea why they can't afford a $25 video to show to people on how to protect intellectual freedom in their libraries. I don't get that.
Well, I'll make a pitch. I'll make a pitch right now to Robert Kraft, who was arrested for frequenting prostitutes. So if he wants to truly prove that he is reformed, that he is sorry, then he can get behind the World Library Association, make a donation to really prove that he is genuinely repentant and that he is reformed and that he is not addicted to pornography anymore. That's my challenge.
Look, they should take it up. I have no doubt that the people who are doing the donating are being and have been misled by the American Library Association. I'll give you an example. Most people oppose sexually explicit books in schools. We know this from a Harris poll. We know it from a Rasmussen poll. We know it from Common Sense and Community Standards, right? But the American Library Association takes its own poll and finds out that most people oppose banned books. Well, guess what? Most people do oppose banned books. But that's what they use as the thing to say, hey, most people oppose banned books, so therefore you can't ban a book in a school. No, that's not. You can't say that. Okay, they're the ones who are in the minority. They've taken a poll to spin things their way. The reality shows that most people oppose explicit books in schools. So if with an organization that fools people making false claims like that, I am not surprised that other organizations are also being fooled by that. They do need to hear from my organization, and they do need to hear that has happened, and we don't do that kind of misleading of communities. And maybe they would wish to consider funding us so that we can counter the message of the American Library Association that only spreads the harm on children and the librarians working in these libraries.
Yeah, and why don't we come back to full screen? Unfortunately, we're up against the end of the program. But that way, I know, Brad, in Canada, you are intending to take good books that are providing truthful information about the trans movement, really what it's all about. And so, again, we're not about banning books. Well, actually, I am. You're the sexually inappropriate books I want out. But you are taking the approach, Brad, that there should be an equal opportunity, an equal presentation of books. And so this is something that can be a creative approach, but the World Library Association would be the organization to then really come behind you and bring to bear the proper approach, the proper pressure to get libraries back to simply being having community standards, being safe places for kids and places.
Thank you very much to both of you for being here today. This is Unmasking the Trans Movement. Please remember you can find us online at our website all the time at unmaskingthetransmovement.com. We're also on BitChute at bitchute.com/unmasking the trans movement. All of our episodes are there. We have tons of information. Please, if you're a parent or a grandparent, now's the time to learn and get yourself acquainted with this situation that we're faced with. Till next time, I'm Brad Wilder on behalf of John Euler and Dan Kleinman. Remember, it's not our kids' fight, it's our fight. We'll see you next time.